Thank you again for taking out time and joining in today's session. So let's get started. My name is Roshan. I work as a solution architect with Ingram Micro Australia. I'm based in Melbourne. I had partners with identifying the right components to make a solution, mapping the business requirement to cloud components. I help them with every stage that is involved between identifying an opportunity till submitting a proposal for the opportunity. So it can involve uh, one-on-one discussions, pre-sales activities, proof of concept demos, um, quotations. So all these various aspects that are involved in pre-sales. You can get in touch with me with my on my email address I've displayed on the screen. So today's session is about how you can have a centralized monitoring solution using Azure Lighthouse and Azure Monitor. So for people who could not attend the first session, I'll be giving you a quick overview of what Azure Lighthouse is, how does it work and its benefits, and then we'll jump into deep dive of Azure Monitor. We'll look at a high level architecture of how Azure Monitor works, what are the inputs and what are the outputs that you get with Azure Monitor, what are some of the key aspects or key components of Azure Monitor, like what is the metrics, what's logs, and what is insights. These are the three main important, I would say, components or terminologies that we have to understand to be able to create and generate proper reports and also be able to monitor our resources, whether it is on-prem or Azure. We'll also look at pricing. Azure Monitor pricing is a little tricky. It's one of the trickiest or difficult components to uh, find out pricing when you compare it with a simple item like a virtual machine or storage. So we'll go into how you can get more details on the pricing, how you can estimate it. We'll also have a demonstration of how you can enable Azure Monitor, how you can generate some reports, how you can look at some of the performance metrics of your resources. And at the end, we'll have a Q&A session. So during the entire session, if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A window to post your questions. I'll review the questions towards the end of the session and hopefully answer all of them. So what is Azure Lighthouse? Azure Lighthouse is an offering from Microsoft. It's actually a free service that is being offered uh, from Microsoft Azure, which allows you to manage multiple customer subscriptions from a single pane of glass, right? So without Azure Lighthouse, there is no option for you to uh, check or manage or monitor multiple subscriptions using one single username and password, right? With Azure Lighthouse, once it is enabled and configured, all your customer resources are projected into your own subscription. So for you to use Azure Lighthouse, you should have an active subscription. And what you do is you basically connect your subscription with your customer's subscription, and hence all your customer resources are projected into your own subscription, and then you can manage and maintain it using the credential of your own subscription, right? Now, your customer can be using any type of subscription. He can be using pay as you go. He can be using a CSP or an enterprise agreement. It does not matter. You can use Azure Lighthouse to manage a customer using any billing model and help him and support him with various managed services offering. One of the biggest benefits of Azure Lighthouse is you don't have to either get an account in the customer domain, or you don't need to create a guest user, right? In each and every subscription. You can have your own account created for your own subscription. You can create groups. Of course, if you have a team who's providing managed services, you'll have Active Directory groups created for them, and you can assign groups permissions to these various resources that are being projected from your customers. So your support team can have specific permissions. Your professional services team can have different set of permissions. So uh, the advantage is you can have different groups providing different services, and you're now more compliant with your customer and able to showcase that which user or which group of users have what kind of permissions on their resources. This is definitely helpful when there is an audit or when there is a compliance um, a rule in place where you have to showcase who has what level of permissions. So before Azure Lighthouse, how would it work? So as you can see here, an MSP tenant will go ahead and create an account in each and every customer subscription, right? And then that account has permission onto the customer resources. In this scenario, the MSP needs to basically have 4 accounts for himself, either a directory account or, I'm sorry, either a B2B account, which is a guest account, or an account as part of the customer's domain or the customer subscription. So MSP needs to manage and maintain 4 usernames, 4 passwords. Uh, he may not be compliant with the password rules and regulations of the customer, password complexity. So those are all the various disadvantages of using this model. Also, at the same time, if your team is using one set of username and password to access all these various subscriptions and customer resources, and let's say one of the member leaves your company, moves to another company, then you basically have to reset the password of that account in every single customer subscription, right? So it becomes very difficult and tricky to manage in this scenario. With Azure Lighthouse, it's the opposite. So what happens is all your customer resources, their resource group, their subscriptions are projected into your subscription, right? So in that scenario, you don't have to create additional accounts. You just create your groups in your own subscription, and then you can manage and maintain your users groups based on your own rules and regulations, and have users access. Now in that scenario, if a user leaves the company, he leaves the company, you can just disable his account in your own subscription, or you can even delete his account, and then his account is basically removed. So now that we know how Azure Lighthouse works and what are its benefits, how can you onboard customers, or how can you project your customer resources onto your own subscription? Now, this was covered with a demonstration in the first session. I'd definitely encourage you to go through the recording of the first session. But there are 2 ways to how you can onboard a customer. One is you can run an ARM template in your customer's subscription. This is the quickest way to onboard your customer, or I would say also the most customized way to onboard your customer, and have you or your team manage and maintain his resources. The second way is you going ahead and implementing or publishing a managed services offering onto the Azure service provider marketplace. So in the second scenario, it is, I would say, more streamlined and better scalable, where you can go ahead and publish what kind of service offering are you offering to your customers, and this becomes available to all the customers worldwide. They can look at the various offerings from all the service providers, select the one that they like, or select the one that is that fits their requirement. Then you get an email notification, you can accept it, and then you start managing and maintaining it. So the second approach is typically recommended uh, for most of the customers or most of the service providers. The first one is, let's say you have a customer who quickly wants you to manage and maintain. He wants it to be highly customized, where he wants to have 4 different groups managing 4 different resource groups, He wants different permissions for each of the resource groups. So an ARM template gives you that very customized and quick approach. The second one is not very delayed, or it's not very complex, but it definitely takes more time, because when you're publishing a managed service offering, Microsoft actually reviews whether your managed service offering is uh, caters to all the policies that they have imposed, right? So they do a check in terms of whether you have the right images, whether you have the right logo of your company. They check whether the description is clear enough for a customer to understand. So there is a review cycle that goes into when you're publishing a managed services offering. So what are the different levels of scope that you can manage? So when I say the customer resources get projected into your subscription, or your tenant, what resources? Will everything from the subscription get projected, or will only certain resources get projected? Uh, so from Azure Lighthouse, you can have the entire subscription being projected, which means all the resources, or the customer can just give you access to a single resource group where only the resources which are part of that resource group get projected, or your customer can have multiple resource groups being projected, right? So these are the three different layers of scope that you have: either the full subscription, single resource group, or multiple resource groups. You cannot have the customer projecting, or via Azure Lighthouse, you cannot just manage a resource like uh, virtual machine and storage. If virtual machine and storage, both of them are part of single resource group, then yes. So the permission level or the scope level is a resource group, and it is not just one resource or a bunch of resources. Okay, so that was a quick overview of Azure Lighthouse. So I hope everybody is now on the same page in understanding Azure Lighthouse. So one of the benefits of Azure Lighthouse, as I said, is once you have all your customer resources being projected onto your subscription, you can then start offering various services to them, right? In the second session, we covered how you can use Azure Security Center to provide security as a service to your customers, right? We looked at things such as how you can provide vulnerability assessment. We saw how you can look at various ports and protocols which they have opened, which may or not be necessary. You can define your own Azure policy, which you can apply for each and every customer. A simple policy can be every customer should use, let's say, managed disk for all his virtual machine. And if one of the customer doesn't, then your team gets notified, and then you can either contact the customer or you can take suitable actions. So there are so many different aspects that you can start providing to all your customers from a single source, which is in the background using Azure Lighthouse. Similarly, today we look at how you can provide monitoring. Now, a lot of customers are moving to Azure. They are migrating all their applications to Azure. And some of the questions that you always get from customers is, why is my virtual machine using 90% of my CPU, or even 100%? Do I need to throw in more virtual machines? Do I need to increase the spec of my existing virtual machine? So these are some of the very general questions that you get, and without you having an insight into how the virtual machine is performing, what is the reason? Is it a single processor that is taking up so much data or so much of resources? We will never be able to find that out without having a right monitoring solution. Some of the other questions that we get is with respect to network, right? A lot of customers come back to us saying, okay, how do I calculate, or how do I get to know exactly the bandwidth details? How much is the data ingress and ingress, egress, or transfer in and transfer out, right? So that is again something that Azure Monitor can help you with. They would also want to know in terms of audit, right? Who is accessing my applications? Who are making changes at let's say the subscription level or the resource group level? Who's creating what? So all of these things are some of the very common questions that we get from a lot of customers, and Azure Monitor has all the features and functionalities that can help you get answers to this. So what is Azure Lighthouse? It's again a native service available within Azure. Like Lighthouse, like Azure Security Center, Azure Monitor is a native service are available out of the box from Microsoft. Now, certain services of Azure Monitor are free, certain services are paid. We'll talk more about the pricing in the upcoming slides. It supports mission critical applications as well. So it has features like continuous monitoring, it has health analysis, it can look at high availability scenarios, both with respect to your infrastructure and your applications. It provides very detailed reporting. There are options where you can even export the reporting into Visual Studio or into Power BI to then further customize or further customize the visualization of how you'd like to view the data. So it's a very advanced tool. It's a tool that will give you all the required information right from your applications to infrastructure, and you're able to provide this information back to your customer as part of your managed services, as part of your ongoing support contract. So you can definitely incorporate Azure Monitor into those offerings. It also has a very rich ecosystem in terms of third-party integration. For example, you can take the logs that are generated from applications and your virtual machines and various resources in Azure. You can push them to log analytics, which is part of Azure Monitor, and then further push it to a third-party system, which you can, which let's say your customer is already using. So you can use things such as Puppet or Chef to then further look at the data into more detail. You can have another monitoring solution like Manage Engine, looking into the details of the logs. So there are different options available where Microsoft can integrate with another third-party monitoring solution and provide you much more advanced analytics, much more detailed reports. So looking at the high level architecture, right? So what are the things that you can monitor and how can you visualize your data? So in terms of what are the things you can monitor a huge range of applications, right? It can be applications which are custom built using, let's say, Python and .NET. You can even monitor your operating system. And this is not just Windows, you can also monitor Linux operating systems. So right from the application layer to the OS layer to the infrastructure layer. So you can monitor database as a service, you can monitor Azure virtual machines, you can monitor containers and Kubernetes, you can monitor networking, right? So you can even monitor a lot of Azure resources, you can monitor Azure subscription. So what do I mean by monitoring Azure subscription? Azure subscription monitoring can give you details in terms of who are making changes in my Azure subscription, right? Who's creating resource? Was there any resource modification, deletion? So all these various things. Azure tenant. So this is with respect to your Active Directory, Azure Active Directory, right? Was there any password reset being recently done? Is there a policy change? Is multi-factor enabled, disabled for users? How well am I using conditional access? How many users are getting errors with respect to their passwords? So all these various information you can pull from Azure Active Directory and custom sources, right? So you can have your own application dumping data into Azure Log Analytics, and then you can provide various types of visualization. And as you can see, in terms of analyzing and reporting back, there are various solutions. You can use dashboards, Power BI, workbooks. You can use Metrics Explorer to analyze it further. You can even respond. This is one of the critical aspects of Azure Monitor. It is not only about analyzing your data, but it is also about taking action. For example, a very simple scenario can be uh, you're monitoring a particular resource, and let's say that resource is not working as expected. Now you want somebody to be notified or alerted so that they can take necessary action, right? So let's say your SQL database as a service is showing high performance in terms of uh, queue in and out, right? So not a lot of requests are being catered by your SQL database as service. So that scenario, you can have an alert configured that sends out an SMS or an email to your DBA, and then he can look into it. Or you can even auto scale. So let's say a virtual machine is not able to cater to user request. You want to auto scale. Yes, you can do that as well. So there are various actionable um, options available within the Azure Monitor, which you could potentially use in order to provide better services to your customer. And you can use this for your own managed services as well. So your team can get alerts and notification and then take suitable action on the resources. So, like I said, there are three major terminologies or aspects that you have to remember when it comes to Azure Monitor. The first one is metrics. Metrics are time-based data points. So these can be things such as CPU utilization from 6 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock in the night, right? So it's a time-based data. How is the disk latency from 2 o'clock in the afternoon to 5 o'clock in the evening? So it's a time-based data point, or it can be things like how much data is downloaded from 9 in the morning to 6 in the evening during your working hours. So all these are data points. So it's very useful to collect and analyze your data points. You can use a combination of various sources and then create a proper visualization chart for your customer. You can also send alerts based on logic. So as I said, it can be as simple as if the CPU percentage increases beyond 70%, your system admin should be notified, right? It can be as simple alert as that. Or you can take it to the next level where you can auto scale it, right? So let's say the same scenario, if my virtual machine exceeds 70% of utilization, I want another virtual machine to be introduced, or I would like to uh, increase the spec of the same virtual machine, increase the size of the same virtual machine, right? So these are the various metrics that you have uh, from Azure Monitor. Let me quickly show you the various metrics. There's a huge list of supported metrics, so I not wanted to crunch into a single slide and show it to you. This is the link. Again, I'll be sharing the presentation after the session. Now, if you scroll down, you have guest OS metrics. Now for this, you'll need to actually enable diagnostic settings or diagnostic logging, and you'll get more information about it. But if I scroll down, as you can see, you have so many different metrics available which you could potentially use as part of your monitoring, right? So it can be uh, I hope everybody is able to see the screen sharing. Let me just double check it. Okay. I was not sure if everybody was able to see the screen sharing. I'm resharing it again. So this is the link, and here you can see the various supported metrics with Azure Monitor. So you have guest OS monitoring, uh, and you can look at the various application, metrics is here. Memory metrics, GPU, total connection requests, connection failures, current user session. This can be something that you can use with your Windows virtual desktop. So there's a whole list of metrics that are available, which you could potentially use as part of your monitoring, right? We go back to the slides here. So now that we know about what metrics, the next important aspect is logs. Now logs are a level higher than metrics. So logs allow you to perform much more complex analysis across data from various sources. For example, I can collect logs such as event logs, and I can collect my IAS logs or application logs and run a query across these two logs to find a meaningful solution or a meaningful information, right? So log analysis within Azure Monitor is a very powerful and can be used for highly complex scenarios, right? So you can combine logs from different sources and have a query where you can get better information about how your application is performing with respect to the infrastructure that you have assigned to that particular application, right? So log analytics is something very powerful. Again, I'll show you some information about this during the demonstration. You can run queries. The queries are very similar in syntax with SQL queries. Uh, so you can definitely look into log analytics if you have advanced reporting requests from your customers. The third is insight. Insight is very specific to applications, right? So logs and metrics are more with respect to Azure resources. So when I say Azure resources, it can be storage, it can be a network interface card, it can be virtual machine, it can be database as a service or SQL as a service. Application insight is actually about your web application or your custom application that you have developed, right? So it is the applications that are producing logs which you would like to further analyze it. It's very useful. It's actually an extension of application performance management, very helpful for developers and DevOps folks. And you can use application insight to get better insight into how your application is performing, how is the dependency with other resources happening, is it able to cater to the user request. So it's more to do with, I'd say, custom application and web applications, and you can do a live monitoring about how your application is performing. So those are the high level introductions to metrics, log, and insights. We'll be going into details of those during our demonstration. I'd like to quickly cover about pricing because I do get a lot of requests from partners asking about, okay, how can I price my monitoring solution to my customers? So quickly jumping on to the pricing web page of Azure Monitor. Now, let me quickly change the location here. So we look at Australian dollar pricing. Okay, and okay. So Azure Monitor, now as you just saw, there are so many different components within Azure Monitor. There is health analysis, there is log analytics, there is application insight, there is metrics. So each of these have its own pricing, right? So let's look at some of the details. One of the major components of Azure Monitor is log analytics. Log analytics, though, is a dedicated service within Azure. It works very closely with Azure Monitor. Now, there are two different ways of how you can price Azure Monitor. I'm sorry, how you can price log analytics. Now, what I've typically seen is not a lot of people go into capacity reservation because, as you can see, capacity reservation is typically applicable if you're generating over 100 GB per day worth of logs, right? And in my experience, there are very few customers that I've come across that actually generate so much data. For SMB and SME customers, it's usually 3-4 GB worth of data that gets generated maximum per day. So for them, pay as you go is the right approach. So in pay as you go, 5 GB worth of data per month is free. So if you have just 1 or 2 applications running on Azure, then just by using the free version of Log Analytics, you should be able to take care of providing then reporting without any additional cost. Even if there is an additional cost, it's not very expensive. It is just $4 per GB, right? So you can definitely look at using Azure Log Analytics for your small to medium customers as well, if they do have a requirement. Now, Azure Log Analytics, when it generates logs, it has to store the logs so that you can do analysis on these, right? So by default, all the logs that are being generated or being consumed by Log Analytics to provide you reports, this log is stored for 31 days, right? Now, if you want to store beyond 31 days, then there is again a price associated with it, right? Which is 20 cents or 20 cents per GB per month. Now coming to application insight. So we looked at log analytics. So this log analytics can be costing with respect to your metrics, where you generate, let's say, CPU and memory related logs. It can also be with respect to querying your logs from different sources. When it comes to application insight, again, this depends on the telemetry data that your website is pushing, right? Depending on your depending on the application that you have developed. So here again, 5 GB worth of data is free per month. Data retention in this scenario is 90 days instead of 30 days, which is 90 days free of cost. Multi-step web tests are not available in the free version, and ping web tests are you can do as many as them as possible. There is no cost associated with that. Now coming to metrics. Now we looked at the web page. It is still open here. Now all the metrics which are displayed on this particular page, these are all the standard metrics, right? And all these standard metrics are free of cost. You don't need to pay for them, right? You can have you can use all these metrics which are available as part of Azure resources, and provide your reports. There are, I think, a little over 300 metrics that are available. Now, if you want to create your own metrics, right, which is something that's not available in the standard list, and if that metrics outputs more than 150 MB worth of data per month, then there is a charge. If it is less than 150 MB, then there is no charge associated with it. Again, with respect to metrics queries, almost 100,000 queries or 1 million standard API calls per month are accepted. Now, again, how do I calculate this API calls? If you're calculating metrics on an hourly basis, then it is 24 API calls per day, right? If your metrics is per month on a minute basis, then each minute is a standard API call. So per month, you can have a little close to 1 million metrics calls, which I think is good enough for a small to medium sized company. Only for larger enterprise customers who have more than 10 applications running on Azure, you might exceed this limit. Health monitoring is also part of Azure Log Analytics and Application Insight. You can definitely use them. Now, with respect to the health criteria, none of them are included in the free. There's always cost associated. Alerts, these are alerts and notifications. 10 metric time series per month. So if you're using alert based on metrics, you can create up to 10 alerts, and all those will be free of cost. If you create more than 10, then there is a small price for it. Um, Activity log, it's unlimited. So I would be sharing this particular link again on the presentation. You can go through it. For SMB and SME customers, small to medium sized customer, Azure Monitor shouldn't cost you more, right? The maximum that I've seen an SMB or an SME customer paying is roughly about $20 to $30 per month, right? And you can provide so much in-depth monitoring and details to such customer. So again, I'll share this particular link with you. It also talks about the charges for emails and calls with respect to alerts and notifications. So the alert cannot just be email, it can also be a phone call or an SMS as well. So let me go back to the slides, and I think we'll jump on to the, okay, let's quickly summarize and then we'll jump on to the demonstration. So to quickly summarize, you can detect and diagnose issues across applications. Now, do remember, Azure Monitor is not just for Azure resources. You could potentially deploy the agent. In the background, Azure Monitor is using a monitoring agent, which is running on, let's say, virtual machines. Now, if it's just storage, then it has a plugin. But let's say if you want to monitor your on-prem servers, right, and get the data of that on Azure, in Azure Monitor, you could potentially deploy the agent on the servers and provide a hybrid monitoring solution. So remember, Azure Monitor is not just for Azure resources, it can be used in hybrid scenarios as well. You can not only use for your core application, core infrastructure. Azure Monitor now supports things such as network storage, even Kubernetes services as well. You can drill down into your logs. As you saw in the previous slide, logs cannot just be about your operating system. It can be with your application, and you can have a complex query that runs across different log sources and provide you meaningful information. You can also have smart alerts and notifications depending on the data being analyzed and collected. And you can visualize the data using various charts and forms, and you can potentially use Power BI to it as well. So this is what Azure Monitor is at a very high level. I'd like to now jump on to the demonstration and show you how you can access where are the various options for metrics and logs and insights. If you do have any questions, as I said, please post them on the Q&A chat. I will be reviewing them from time to time and be able to answer. Okay, so I've logged into my Azure portal. I hope everybody is able to view it clearly. And as I said, Azure Monitor is a service. So all you need to do is just search for Monitor, and you should find something called as Monitor, which is part of the service. Now, once you click that, the three things which we spoke about, right? Metrics, query and analyze logs, and set up alerts and actions, right? So these are the three most important aspects of Azure Monitor. Now, for people who are new to Azure Monitor, there is a tutorials and demo section, right? So if you want to manage your Azure VMs, it will directly give you a link where it has a get starting guide of how you can set up Azure monitoring for virtual machines for various different aspects. It also has courses. Now these courses are part of Pluralsight, and you can definitely go through them and understand more about Azure Monitor, how it functions, how you can configure the concepts, all of these things. It also has videos from various sources like Azure Friday, Garage series, even from Ignite as well. And it also has trials. For example, Microsoft has set up some demo reports with respect to log analytics and Azure application insight, we can definitely look into these during your learning and be able to provide a better solution to your customers. Right, so Microsoft has invested a lot of time and effort in creating tutorials and demos for it. And what's new is basically some of the recent features that Microsoft is introducing, right? So this is one stop where you can get details in terms of what are the new enhancements, what are the features in preview and general availability, and you get all the details of it right in one single place. Okay, so if you look at activity log is what is happening across my Azure monitoring, right? So have I created an action group? Have I created an alert? Have I created a new log workspace? So activity log is basically telling me what are the various things have I configured in my Azure monitor. So this is definitely useful to understand the changes being done by your monitoring team across various subscriptions, right? Azure alerts, this is where you configure alerts, right? So if I say a new alert rule, I can configure, okay, what is the scope, right? I have to define a scope, condition, and action. So let's go ahead and create a particular rule here. So as part of my Azure subscription, let me drill down to, let's say, virtual machine, because I have a bunch of virtual machines in this. Virtual machines. So it displays all my virtual machines. I'll say I want to configure a rule on Active Directory, right? So now the resource is selected. What is the condition? The condition I want to set is, let's say, percentage CPU, right? Over the last 6 months, last 6 hours. And the way I want to do is if the CPU percentage increases on an average above 70% in the frequency, in the granularity of every 5 minutes, what I want to do. Now, one of the good parts about Azure is it also displays you the approximate cost that this particular condition might cost you. And this is a very interesting feature that they have introduced, which will also help you define your pricing model for your customers as well. So once this is done, what kind of action would you like to take? So typically the action would be to send out an alert or notification. So I've created action group. Action group is basically what kind of action should you take. So let me actually create a new action group. So I'll say DC alert, DC CPU. I'll say DC CPU alert. And here I'll give DC group as the name and what kind of action. I can run a run book, I can send a SMS, I can send an email, I can run a logic graph, I can even send this request to my ITSM system, right? So if you have your own support management system, you can even send it to that particular system. I'll just select email, and in edit details, I'll just put in an email address, right? So I'll say the request should be sent to, let's say, dhoni@virtualsolution.club, right? This is one of the user I have in my organization. And I click OK. So I've defined what I want to monitor, what condition I want to monitor it on, and what kind of action should I take if this condition is matched. And here at the end, I just need to create the alert details, right? So I'll say this is DC monitoring. I'll give it more details in the description. Severity, I can say this is severity 2 and enable once the alert is created. So creation of alerts is very, very simple, right? And as you just saw, as part of my free subscription, or in terms of my metrics, if I don't want to exceed and start paying, I'll need to create metrics, 10 metrics. I can create up to 10 alerts and notifications across my subscription. So that is about alerts. If I want to look at metrics, again, it's very similar, but here you get a more detailed analysis. So I'll first select my resource group. I'll select my virtual machines. The location gets selected, and I would apply for all the virtual machines which are part of that particular resource group. Here, I can select the various metrics, right? So these are the various metrics that are there. So let's say I will talk about network in total, right? So it across my virtual machines, what are the various data or sorry, what are the various traffic flows? Now, not much network data is flowing in. Let me look at disk read operations, right? So as you can now see across my various virtual machines, I can see various disk read and write operations happening. And this I can directly go ahead and pin it to my dashboard. And if my read operation is taking too much time, I can see what exactly is happening, which virtual machine is that, and then take a suitable action around it. I can create various charts. This is a line chart. I can even create different types of bar graphs and scattered chart as well. So depending on what is suitable in terms of understanding, you can definitely go and create them. Logs. Logs are a very powerful feature for Azure. Again, you select on what type resource you want to do log analytics on, and here I can start providing sending out logs to various different applications. So for example, if I go to my virtual machine, there are different queries already pre-created. For example, if I want to see the security baseline, I can select this particular query and send security baseline generated, and it shows me the various features of that particular query, right? I had made some audit policy changes. I had made some registry key changes. It also shows me what are the various items that I've enabled and disabled, the rule settings. So all of these things are displayed to you. And then you can further customize this and have it in a visual format, right? So for example, you want to look at all the system logs or all the update logs, you can definitely look at them as well uh, and see if there is any updates on it. So a lot of queries are pre-configured, but you can also go ahead and create your own queries as well, right? You can run your own queries over here. This is a query editor. You can run your queries across different sources and tables and generate your own report. Let me quickly jump onto the insights before I take up the questions. So under insights, we can look at more details with respect to virtual machines, storage and containers. So here you will see all the various resources on which you can have a monitoring done. Now, for example, it displays all the virtual machines. If I need to get another virtual machine onboarded, all I have to do is just say enable, and as soon as I click enable, it will go ahead and install the agent of this agent on this machine, and then all my data from this machine is now then flowing into the logs. I can start creating matrices around it. So it's very, very simple to onboard virtual machine, and the same holds true for storage as well, right? If you have various storage and you want to check how much data in or data out is happening. Let's say you're using blob storage for your backup and recovery purposes. You can definitely go ahead and use monitoring to see how much data in, data out, what kind of latency is happening across those storage, especially when you're doing backup or restore operations. I don't have any containers in my subscription, but you can definitely do uh, various features and changes on the containers as well. So this is a very quick overview of how Azure Monitor works and how you can enable it. We also looked at the pricing options. So I want to go back to my slides and see if we have any further questions on it. So let me skip these slides. We have already covered it. Okay, so let's jump on to the questions. Is Azure monitoring free of cost? Yeah, there are certain resources which are free and certain resources which are not free. So it completely depends on what are you creating, what matrices are you creating, how many matrices are you creating. If you go through the pricing link, which you'll receive as part of today's session, you'll get more details about it. Okay, so that was the only question which I had. If you do have any further questions, please post them on the chat or the Q&A panel. If you don't have any questions, then ladies and gentlemen, that pretty much brings us to the end of today's session. I hope the session and the series was helpful and informative. I hope now you have ideas in terms of how you can provide managed services offering to your customers using Azure Lighthouse, Azure Monitor, and Azure Security Center. If you would like to discuss more and help us create work with you and create these offerings and help you enable and get more training on it, do feel free to get in touch with us, and we'll be more than happy to assist you. If you have no further questions, thank you very much for taking out time and attending the session. Have a great day ahead.